Hello, I am Huazai, a Chinese scholar who is good at interpreting Western works with Chinese ideas and telling you about them. What we are going to talk about in this issue is Poor Charlie's Almanack, which is a compilation of the investment philosophy of financial tycoon Charlie Munger. The book contains 11 speeches he gave over the past 20 years and various articles he published. As its subtitle suggests, this book is truly Charlie Munger's wisdom. When many hear the term wisdom, their first reaction might be chicken soup for the soul or success stories. However, I must admit that this is truly a remarkable book. Even its title betrays its value. Several scholars have recommended or interpreted it. This edition of our interpretation will draw upon the strengths of these scholars, bringing together their core perspectives to present the book's fascinating content. Before I delve into Munger's core ideas, let's first discuss Charlie Munger himself. You may not be particularly familiar with him, but you certainly know his partner, Warren Buffett. Some consider Munger to be, in a sense, Buffett's mentor. Buffett himself has said that if there were one person who had the greatest influence on his investing career, the first would be Benjamin Graham, known as the Godfather of Wall Street, and the second would be Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger and Buffett are partners in Berkshire Hathaway, the world's most expensive company. In April 2017, its share price reached $250,000, which translates to 1.7 million RMB per share. Charlie Munger is the miracle creator of this incredibly profitable company. Born on January 1, 1924, in Omaha, in the heart of the American Midwest, Munger's life wasn't always smooth sailing for today's financial tycoon. Before the age of 30, he experienced financial crises, dropping out of school due to war, divorce, and the loss of his son. For many, such experiences would likely lead to a complete collapse. However, Munger remained undefeated by these successive hardships and misfortunes. Instead, they honed his character and gradually developed his investment acumen. Throughout his investment career, Munger adhered to the traditional spirit of the American West, practicing diligence and focus, treating people with sincerity, integrity and kindness, and frugally investing for the future. This earned him the trust of many, who were willing to work with him, allowing him to explore other investment ventures and ultimately earn his first million in real estate. Afterward, relying on his sharp analysis and thinking, he partnered with Buffett to acquire businesses like Blue Chip Stamps and invested in numerous high-quality companies, ultimately building his own financial empire. Those who have interacted with Munger believe that his ideas and methodology, or mental model, are extremely valuable. What is Charlie Munger's unique life wisdom? Next, we'll focus on this section. I'll first explain Charlie Munger's renowned multiple thinking models, then, combined with his contrarian thinking approach, explain how to utilize these thinking methods to build your own knowledge system. Finally, we'll focus on Munger's investment strategy. When recommending Poor Charlie's Almanack, many teachers invariably mention Charlie Munger's multiple mental models. Munger advocates for continuous learning across a wide range of disciplines to form a complex framework of mental models. When you only have one tool, you can only work with that one tool. Therefore, Munger says the most important thing is to firmly memorize a series of principles, including the principle of compound interest, the principle of permutations and combinations, decision tree theory, the psychology of misjudgment, and over 100 other models. These combined forces often create immense power. This is the result of 2, 3, or 4 forces working together in the same direction, and the result is often more than the sum of their parts. The reason for building this multifaceted mental model is that, in Charlie Munger's view, the universe is a complex whole, and all human knowledge is an attempt to understand this complex whole. Disciplines have no clear boundaries, but rather influence each other. Viewing things through a single mental model can distort reality until it fits one's own mental model, leading to foolish and absurd mistakes. As Charlie Munger often quotes, "To the man with a hammer, the whole world looks like a nail." We have a similar old joke in China. A beggar who had been begging on the streets for years said, "If I were to become emperor, I would definitely go begging with a golden bowl." While this joke is a bit exaggerated, it does to some extent reflect the limitations of a single-minded perspective. When we talk about pluralistic thinking, We often think of it as a methodology, but in essence, it's a basic attitude toward understanding the world, an inclusive and systematic approach, or as Munger calls it, a pluralistic one. Why is that? Let me try to explain. Have you noticed that the more mature a person is, the less they argue for their opinions and instead offer explanations from different perspectives? What does no opinions, only explanations mean? It means that when faced with a problem, they rarely express assertive opinions, such as what the government should do, whether this approach is right or wrong, who is the good guy and who is the bad guy. They don't discuss or comment on these topics. Instead, they are more concerned with whether there are alternative explanations for a phenomenon, whether it's possible to view it from a different perspective. Some might say, isn't this just empty talk without practice? On the contrary, caring about what others do is empty talk. You're interfering with their practices. Only by caring about different perspectives on the world can you put it into practice. In the process of transitioning from subjective understanding to objective practice, you must also note the deep gap between the subjective and practical worlds. The subjective world is full of absolute principles, while the objective world is all about just the right actions. How do you understand this? For example, when we go to driving school to learn how to drive, we first learn traffic rules and the mechanics of cars. This is all subjective, and we learn many principles. But once we're in the car and on the road, those principles are of little use. At every moment of driving, do you decide whether to steer left or right? Neither is correct. Driving practice requires just the right balance, neither left nor right. This is practice in the objective world. In the practical world, every concrete activity is like this: writing, crafts, playing ball, starting a business, and so on. They all involve finding that perfect dynamic balance between two conflicting principles. It can be said that every educated young person has already established a subjective world in their head, understanding everything. So what's the task for the rest of life? It's to constantly deal with inconsistencies between the subjective and objective worlds, constantly finding the perfect balance. Isn't it said that people should be honest? That's the principle of the subjective world. But why is it that in the objective world, sometimes lying is unavoidable and seemingly not considered a moral flaw? Isn't it said that the law pursues justice? Why does the law, in practice, also consider the costs of pursuing justice? Isn't it said that hard work and kindness will lead to a bright future? Why am I working so hard, yet I still can't get along? You've heard the saying, I've heard so much, but I still can't live a good life. It describes this phenomenon. We can fall into this gap between the subjective and objective worlds at any moment. If you can climb out of it, you've bridged it, taking the things that are inconsistent with our subjective world and letting them shatter within ourselves, then rebuilding ourselves. This process is called growth. Therefore, the faster a person grows and the older they get, the more complex and diverse their spiritual world will be. Therefore, Charlie Munger repeatedly emphasizes the importance of multiple mental models in Poor Charlie's Almanack. This concept of multiple mental models serves as the glue between the subjective and objective worlds, the net that prevents us from falling into the ditch. You may now understand why we initially stated that multiple mental models are a fundamental approach to understanding the world. Why do many mature people prefer explanations over opinions? Because a growing number of perspectives on phenomena can help you grow. As an outsider, it's too easy and cheap to criticize others, especially those who are actually doing concrete things, and to criticize their right and wrong. This is simply a brandishing of pre-existing concepts and principles from your own subjective world. While this may make you feel good, it doesn't benefit your own growth and progress. You're essentially dictating to others' practices. To apply this to your own practice, we must maintain an inclusive and diverse perspective, allowing a variety of concepts and interpretations to coexist within our own mental world, ultimately nourishing our own practice. Charlie Munger's multiple mental models is a great starting point. Well, by now, I believe you've grasped the value of multiple thinking models. We've repeatedly emphasized that empty talk about principles is useless. The key lies in putting them into practice. Of course, daily practice is multifaceted. Let's take, for example, something relevant to all lifelong learners: building your own knowledge system. Here, we need to introduce another thinking model: reverse thinking. Charlie Munger uses a method. Before considering where you want to go, first consider where you shouldn't go. He calls this reverse thinking. This approach of thinking backwards is what we often call reverse thinking. It's a common thinking method used in mathematical proofs, designed to test our ability to transfer ideas. Many people may be familiar with reverse thinking when solving math proofs in school, and are adept at using the process of elimination when answering multiple choice questions on exams. However, in real life, they may rarely consider this method of thinking. Charlie Munger highly advocates reverse thinking, believing that for complex systems in the human brain, applying reverse thinking often makes problems easier to solve. He typically first identifies what not to do before considering the next steps. Similarly, if we want to build a good knowledge system, it's best to first identify the characteristics of a bad knowledge system and then avoid them. In fact, a bad knowledge system has three main characteristics: lack of depth, homogeneity, and loose connections. Let's start with the first, lack of depth. This is easy to understand. Think about it. No matter how broad a person's knowledge is, they should at least have a deep understanding of some area. If you know a little about everything but don't understand everything deeply, you'll find it difficult to connect the dots between phenomena and underlying principles. This weakens our competitiveness in society. The second, homogeneity, is homogeneity. A homogeneous knowledge system can lead to a narrow perspective. For example, everyone has heard of the brand Muji. The company discovered a problem in employee management. Those who have been in sales for a long time tended to believe that product sales are primarily due to sales, while those who have been in product development tended to believe that product sales are primarily due to good quality, and sales are not very important. Obviously, both of these views are one-sided, so the company decided to implement a cross-departmental rotation system. For example, some employees moved from R&D to sales, and then from sales to finance. This, in essence, is Muji's goal for employees to develop a balanced and comprehensive perspective and move away from single-minded solutions. And finally, there's the third concept, looseness and disconnection. In life, we observe a variety of phenomena, such as phenomenon 1 and phenomenon 2, which may be explained by the same theory. Similarly, theory 1 and theory 2 may also share a common underlying framework. Looseness and disconnection, however, means you fail to identify the commonalities among these pieces of knowledge, much like leaving clothes piled up without organizing them. Over time, this not only increases your cognitive load, but also easily leads to a loose, disorganized knowledge system. Now that we understand what constitutes a bad knowledge system, let's discuss what constitutes a good one. A good knowledge system shares these characteristics. At a macro level, it resembles the letter T, while at a micro level, it resembles the letter Y. Why does it resemble a T at a macro level? Essentially, a good knowledge system possesses depth in a particular field, while also encompassing a broad, multidisciplinary perspective. Isn't that like the letter T? Who can exemplify this? Charlie Munger. This investment luminary, along with Warren Buffett, has established the best investment record of all time, with an average annual compound return exceeding 20%. How did he do it? Charlie Munger attributes his impressive success to his early development of a unique way of thinking, which he calls multiple models. Simply put, you must understand the key theories in important disciplines and apply them frequently. All of them, not just a few. We all know that most people use only the models of a single discipline they've learned. For example, in economics, they tend to try to solve every problem with that single approach. As the saying goes, if you have a hammer, the whole world looks like a nail. This is a clumsy approach to problem solving. If applied to investing, it generally doesn't yield the desired results. So, how does Charlie Munger do it? The secret is, again, multiple models. Munger's investment approach is completely different from the crude systems used by most investors. When Munger invests in a company, he doesn't simply assess its financials. Instead, he conducts a comprehensive analysis of its internal operations and the entire ecosystem within which it operates. This requires borrowing and blending analytical tools and methods from various traditional disciplines, including history, psychology, mathematics, engineering, physics, statistics, and economics. Why is so much needed? Munger's answer is almost. Every system is influenced by multiple factors, so to understand such a system, you must skillfully apply diverse thinking from different disciplines. This is what we call a T-shaped architecture at the macro level. Now let's talk about why the micro level resembles the letter Y. For example, if you're doing design, you might only use design knowledge. A Y-shaped knowledge architecture means you can't just use a single piece of knowledge. You need to integrate other types of knowledge. For example, combining design with cognitive science is a great example of a Y-shaped knowledge architecture. If you're designing a poster, consider in advance what information your audience should prioritize, what emotional reactions they will experience, and whether it aligns with user expectations. Can it spark their curiosity? Can they know how to act without even thinking? Think about it. If a designer understands the laws of human cognition, even just the basic principles, their designs will be much better than those without. Therefore, the Y-shaped knowledge architecture emphasizes the deliberate integration of knowledge from two or more disciplines at the micro-application level. Why is this deliberate? Because for most people, when they focus on their areas of expertise, they fall into routines. Without deliberate effort, it's difficult to incorporate knowledge from other disciplines. Okay, this concludes the second core point of Poor Charlie's Almanack. We all know that in modern society, building a personal knowledge system is crucial. But what constitutes a good knowledge system, and how do we build one? We borrowed Charlie Munger's reverse thinking method. After analyzing what constitutes a bad knowledge system, we then, based on his multidisciplinary thinking model, proposed what constitutes a good knowledge system. We also point out that building a good knowledge system involves 3 steps. 1. Finding in-depth knowledge points. 2. Establishing a multidisciplinary knowledge system. And 3. Integrating and cross-fertilizing knowledge. Part 3. You might ask, since Charlie Munger is such a prominent figure in the investment world, he must have his own investment philosophy, right? Of course he does, and in the final part of this analysis, we'll focus on this philosophy. According to Charlie Munger, investment projects can be divided into 3 categories: investable, uninvestable, and too difficult to understand. He only invests in investable projects and avoids the other 2. For example, Charlie Munger never invests in the pharmaceutical and high-tech industries because, in his opinion, these industries are too difficult to understand. So, how do you evaluate whether a project is investable? Charlie Munger has 4 screening criteria. Let's take a look. The first criterion is that the project must be easy to understand, have room for growth, and be able to survive in any market environment. Charlie Munger says that you should invest within your circle of competence. If you don't understand a project, no matter how good others say it is, don't invest. Don't overestimate your capabilities, and don't blindly follow the crowd. The Rick saying. Second criterion is that you shouldn't just look at a company's financial statements. Both internal and external factors must be considered. Financial statements can only reveal a company's current value, not its future profitability. Investment, then, requires that a project also generate profits in the future. Therefore, even if a company's financial statements look good, don't invest rashly. Consider many factors, such as the quality of the company's founders, the availability of suppliers, and inventory levels. These all require careful consideration. The third criterion is whether a company has a strong moat. What is a moat? It's its industry barriers. A company's most important competitive advantage isn't its current year's profits, but its ability to continue making profits in the future. How can a company ensure sustained profitability? Establish industry barriers. If a company lacks industry barriers and has low barriers to entry, it will face numerous competitors in the future, making it uncertain who will emerge victorious. Therefore, establishing industry barriers is also a crucial indicator of whether a project is worth investing in. The fourth criterion is that investing in large companies with fair stock prices is better than investing in ordinary companies with low stock prices. This is because other shareholders may increase their capital or transfer their equity in the future, leading to equity dilution and declining dividends. Large companies offer higher value and more stable returns. For example, the companies he and Buffett invested in, including the Washington Post, the Government Employees Insurance Company, and Coca-Cola, are all large corporations. Once a project meets the aforementioned criteria, they'll go all in and invest heavily. Charlie Munger believes that all smart investing is value investing. You must first assess the value of a business, then the value of its stock, and then determine whether to hold the company's stock based on its competitive advantages. To better understand value investing, let me share one final anecdote. Charlie Munger's Chinese investment partner is Li Lu. When Li Lu and Charlie Munger met, Munger was already in his late 80s, and logically, his energy and physical strength were declining. The two often met at 7:30 p.m. breakfast time. The first time, Li Lu arrived almost on time, only to find Charlie Munger already finished breakfast and the newspaper. Li Lu felt embarrassed. Although he wasn't late, he had kept the old man waiting for so long. So, for their second meeting, Li Lu arrived 15 minutes early, only to find Charlie Munger still sitting there reading the newspaper. The third time, Li Lu arrived half an hour early, and still saw the old man reading a newspaper. The fourth time, Li Lu arrived an hour early, finally arriving before Charlie Munger. 15 minutes later, the old man sat down swaying with a stack of newspapers, and without a second thought, he read and ate breakfast. Only after finishing his reading did he look up at Li Lu and begin their conversation. If you were to meet an elderly man like this in your life, what would you think? You see, he doesn't brag about anything. He simply lives his life this way year after year, presenting himself to the world as reliable, studious, and respectful. He commands the respect of his collaborators without needing any extra words. Understanding this and then looking at the value investing championed by Munger and Buffett, you'll understand their deeper meaning. Value investing isn't just about buying a stock and holding it for the long term. It means forgoing all speculation and focusing solely on the stock's fundamental value. When a stock's price is high, it's impossible to predict short-term factors. The most important, core, and reliable factor is whether the price is worth it. The best way to get something is to make yourself worthy of it. This is one of Charlie Munger's most famous quotes. Taken at face value, this quote is a classic example of chicken soup for the soul. A good definition of chicken soup for the soul is a bowl of delicious soup served hot but without a spoon. The implication is that the idea is good but without the implementation method. But is Munger's philosophy truly an unattainable chicken soup? Not at all. For example, when we combine his statement, the best way to get something is to make yourself worthy of it. With his value investing strategy, we find that they essentially convey the same idea. We can also think of the former as a mindset, the latter as a technique. Whether one can discern the commonality between the two truly tests one's skill. In summary, the many principles taught by Charlie Munger and his book Poor Charlie's Almanack can be summed up in this simple statement. You must improve yourself to strengthen your perception of the world. Only then can your inner abilities grow and align with the broader trends of the world. This improved alignment will ensure success in investing, starting a business, or anything else you pursue. So what do you think? Is this a recipe for inspiration? Can you find a spoon to drink from it?